My husband Alex gave me a watch for our anniversary, a seemingly thoughtful gift. However, every single time I dared to put it on my wrist, a wave of inexplicable anxiety and a profound feeling of being unwell would wash over me. It got so bad that I finally decided to sell it, hoping to be rid of this unsettling object. But the owner of the pawn shop, a grizzled man who'd seen his share of strange items, was absolutely horrified. His eyes widened in alarm as he exclaimed, "Where in God's name did you get this? You need to go straight to the police. This is dead serious." Before we delve deeper into this terrifying mystery, please take a moment to tell us in the comments below which country you're tuning in from. Now let's get back to Anna's harrowing story. On their wedding anniversary, Alex, my husband, presented me with a small velvet box. Inside, nestled like a precious jewel on a bed of creamy silk, lay a vintage watch. Its delicate ivory-colored dial was framed by a refined gold bezel, and the soft aged leather strap felt surprisingly comfortable against my skin. "Happy anniversary, my love," Alex whispered, his eyes usually so warm glowing with what seemed like genuine tenderness. He carefully lifted the watch from its luxurious casing and gently fastened it around my wrist. "I found it in a little antique shop. It instantly reminded me of you, elegant and timeless." I couldn't help but admire the gift. The watch was truly exquisite, radiating a sense of history and understated beauty. I thanked Alex, hugged him tightly, and returned his loving kiss. His thoughtfulness and unwavering care had always meant the world to me. Alex had a unique way of making me feel cherished, like I was the most important person in his world. That evening, Alex was particularly affectionate and attentive. He prepared my absolute favorite dinner, roast duck with crisp apples, lit flickering candles that cast a romantic glow around our cozy dining room, and played soft melodic music that filled the air. We reminisced about the sweet early years of our marriage, laughed until our sides ached over funny shared memories, and excitedly made plans for our bright future together. I felt utterly happy and deeply loved. It truly seemed to me that our bond only grew stronger and more resilient with each passing year. However, the very first day I decided to wear the beautiful watch to my job at the university, where I worked as a professor, I began to feel off. At first, it was just a mild weakness and a creeping sense of anxiety, as if an inexplicable unease was slowly brewing deep inside me. Then came a nagging headache and a dizzying sensation that made me grip my desk for support. I initially attributed it to simple fatigue and the demanding schedule of university life. It was exam season after all, and I was likely just pushing myself too hard. "Just focus on your lecture," I told myself, trying to shake off the growing discomfort. But the weakness persisted, growing steadily stronger with each passing minute. I struggled to concentrate on my lesson, my carefully prepared words jumbling in my mind. Black spots began to flicker at the edges of my vision, and an urgent, overwhelming need to sit down washed over me. As soon as my classes were over, I practically ran home and immediately ripped the watch off my wrist. The instant it was gone, a soothing coolness spread through my body, chasing away the oppressive heat. The weakness gradually faded, my mind cleared, and the suffocating anxiety finally subsided. I was utterly surprised. Could the watch, this beautiful gift from my loving husband, really be the cause of my sudden and intense discomfort? I dismissed it as a bizarre coincidence. "Tomorrow," I told myself, "I'll wear it again and see what happens." The very next day, the unsettling pattern repeated with alarming accuracy. As soon as I clasped the watch around my wrist, my condition worsened dramatically. The weakness returned with a vengeance, accompanied by a debilitating dizziness and a wave of nausea that made my stomach churn. When I finally removed the watch hours later, the relief was immediate and significant. It was then that I began to notice other, more disturbing oddities. Where the watch's clasp made contact with my skin, a faint but noticeable redness had appeared. The skin looked irritated, slightly inflamed, as if something was actively causing a reaction. I told Alex about my strange symptoms, the immediate relief I felt upon removing the watch, and the peculiar rash. But he simply brushed it off, his usual concern, replaced by a dismissive wave of his hand. "Darling, you're being too sensitive," he said, pulling me into a quick, unconvincing hug. "It's probably just an allergy to the metal. Don't worry your pretty little head about it. If it gets any worse, we'll see a doctor." I couldn't shake the feeling that Alex wasn't taking me seriously. He often did this when I sensed something was genuinely wrong, attributing my concerns to me being too emotional or prone to exaggeration. But I couldn't ignore the undeniable physical reaction I had every time I wore the watch. My intuition screamed at me that something was terribly wrong with this gift, this supposed token of his love. A seed of suspicion began to sprout in my mind, a tiny tendril of unease that quickly began to wrap itself around my heart. I started observing Alex more closely, my senses on high alert. It seemed to me that his behavior had subtly yet disturbingly changed in recent weeks. He had become more withdrawn, more irritable, often staying late at work without a convincing explanation. And I'd caught him whispering on the phone on several occasions, always stepping out onto the balcony as if to hide his conversations. I tried talking to him, trying to bridge the growing gap between us, but he skillfully dodged my questions, always citing exhaustion and mounting work stress. A thick, impenetrable wall of misunderstanding and a chilling distance began to grow between us, casting a long shadow over our once happy home. One tense evening, while Alex was in the shower, the nagging suspicion became unbearable. I knew it was wrong, a violation of the trust we once shared, but I desperately needed to confirm the growing unease in my gut. I cautiously picked up his phone, my heart pounding in my chest like a trapped bird. I quickly scrolled through his call logs and text messages, but found nothing overtly suspicious. Then my eyes landed on his email app. A single unread message from an unfamiliar address caught my attention. It contained just a few chilling words: "The watch is ready, awaiting payment." A cold dread washed over me, leaving me shivering despite the warmth of the room. What did it mean? I quickly closed the email and turned off his phone, my mind racing, trying to make sense of the cryptic message. I didn't know what to think, but a profound sense of danger began to take root. From that moment on, I knew I had to conduct my own investigation. I had to uncover whatever Alex was hiding and understand why this seemingly beautiful watch was making me so violently ill. A terrifying feeling that my life might be in imminent danger began to consume me. My first step was to confide in my closest friend Serena, a sharp and resourceful lawyer who had always been my rock in tough situations. Serena listened intently to my increasingly frantic story, her brow furrowing with concern. She didn't interrupt, allowing me to pour out my fears and observations. When I finally finished, her expression was grave. "Anna, I think you need to have that watch examined," she said, her voice low and serious. "There could be a hidden defect or worse, something intentionally dangerous." I nodded, the cold knot of fear in my stomach tightening. I knew Serena was right. I needed an expert to inspect the watch, someone who could provide a professional, unbiased opinion. But who could I trust? Who could I tell about my increasingly terrifying suspicions without putting myself in even greater danger? Serena, after listening intently to my mounting anxieties, frowned deeply. "Redness on your wrist, Anna. That's not just a joke, even if Alex tries to make it sound like it's a simple metal allergy. It's always better to be safe than sorry. And your symptoms, it's far too strange that they perfectly align with you wearing the watch. Have it checked by someone who knows what they're doing, or just sell it, get rid of it entirely." I nodded, feeling a cold wave of fear slowly grip me. Serena's words, backing up my own increasingly dark suspicions, became a heavy burden. "You're right, Serena. I'll take it to a pawn shop. Maybe they can tell me if anything's off." The next day, summoning every ounce of courage I possessed, I visited a small, unassuming pawn shop on the quiet outskirts of the city. The place looked modest but trustworthy, with a simple sign in the window reading "Appraisal and Purchase of Watches and Jewelry." I chose this particular shop hoping for a degree of confidentiality and professionalism, away from anyone who might know Alex or me. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of old wood and furniture polish. Behind the counter stood a middle-aged man with thick salt and pepper eyebrows and keenly attentive eyes. His name tag read, "Mikey, Appraiser." I approached the counter, desperately trying to mask my rising nervousness. "Hello," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I'd like to have this appraised." I carefully took the vintage watch from my bag and placed it gently on the worn wooden counter. Mikey picked up the watch with practiced hands, donned a pair of reading glasses perched on his nose, and began his examination. He turned it over meticulously, studied it under a powerful magnifying glass, and even listened intently to its delicate mechanism. I watched him holding my breath, the silence in the small shop amplifying the frantic beating of my heart. After what felt like an eternity, Mikey looked up, his expression shifting from professional focus to a strange, wary concern. He cleared his throat as if carefully gathering his thoughts. "These watches," he began, his voice suddenly low and serious, "have been modified." A jolt of icy fear shot down my spine. "Modified? What do you mean?" Mikey looked at me intently, his gaze unwavering. "I've been working with watches for many years, ma'am. This is a genuine vintage piece, quite valuable in its original state. But something's been added to it, something bad." He picked up the watch again, his thick finger pointing to the delicate clasp. "See this tiny seam here? Something's been soldered in very carefully, professionally, but it's definitely not a factory part." I leaned in my eyes, straining to see what he was indicating. I noticed a barely visible line, almost perfectly blended with the surrounding metal. "What could it be?" I asked, panic beginning to rise like a suffocating tide within me. Mikey sighed a heavy, foreboding sound. "I can't say for sure without a proper analysis, but I have suspicions. Very bad suspicions." He reached under the counter and produced a small specialized tool. With painstaking care, he gently pried open the tiny clasp. Inside, nestled within the metal, was a minuscule, hair-thin capillary tube. Wearing thin protective gloves, Mikey cautiously extracted it. "There's something here," he said, holding the fragile tube up to the light. "Some kind of liquid, colorless, odorless, but I'm almost certain it's not water." The world around me began to blur at the edges. "What could it be?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper, a wave of nausea rising in my throat. Mikey looked me directly in the eyes, his expression grim. "Ma'am, I'm not a medical expert, but based on my experience, this looks like a slow-acting poison, something that would gradually worsen your health without leaving any obvious traces." I staggered back from the counter, my hand flying to my mouth. Poison in the watch, but my mind raced, replaying Alex's strange behavior, his evasive answers, the hushed phone calls, his recent preoccupation with finances. The disparate pieces of the puzzle began to click into place, forming a horrifying, unbelievable picture. "Have you been wearing this watch?" Mikey asked, his voice filled with genuine concern. I nodded, my throat tight with unshed tears. "Yes, every day. It was a gift from my husband, for our anniversary." Mikey shook his head slowly, a look of profound sadness in his eyes. "Ma'am, you need to go to the police immediately, and trust no one. No one except the police and perhaps your closest, most trusted friends. Otherwise, it might already be too late." He spoke quietly, but each word landed like a heavy verdict. I stood frozen, unable to speak, my mind swirling with fragments of thoughts, memories, and terrifying suspicions. Alex, my Alex, the man I had vowed to spend my life with, wanted to kill me. Seeing my distress, Mikey quickly poured me a glass of water. "Pull yourself together," he urged gently. "You need to act now. Your safety is the absolute priority." I took a few shaky sips, trying to regain some semblance of control. "What should I do?" I asked, looking at Mikey with a desperate glimmer of hope. "First, don't wear that watch anymore, not even for a second. Second, go straight to the police. Tell them everything you know. Show them the watch, the capillary tube. They'll conduct a proper analysis and determine exactly what that substance is. Third, be extremely careful. Don't tell anyone what you've learned, especially not your husband." I nodded slowly, a fragile sense of determination beginning to return. "Thank you," I whispered to Mikey, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you so much. You may have just saved my life." Mikey shook his head. "I just did my job, ma'am. Now it's up to you. Be strong and find the truth." I left the pawn shop feeling utterly drained, the weight of Mikey's words pressing down on me. The familiar world around me seemed suddenly foreign and hostile. The one person I had trusted implicitly had become my potential killer. Back home, an icy shard of fear had lodged itself in my mind. Mikey's grave warning about the poison echoed relentlessly in my consciousness. Alex, my Alex with whom I had shared my deepest secrets, my hopes, my very bed, could be behind this elaborate nightmare. I had to be absolutely sure. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. Forcing a semblance of normalcy, I tried to act as if nothing was amiss. Alex greeted me with a perfunctory smile, asking how my dress fitting had gone, the flimsy excuse I'd concocted to explain my absence. I responded vaguely, citing a sudden headache, and hurried to the shower, desperate to wash away not just the city dust, but the sticky, suffocating feeling of betrayal. After a tense, silent dinner, I excused myself to my study, claiming the persistent headache. I knew I had to act quickly and discreetly. Knowing Alex could walk in at any moment, I moved with a newfound caution. First, I checked his computer. Alex wasn't particularly careful with online security, and his password, as I sadly suspected, was simple: our wedding date. At first glance, his email seemed innocent enough. Work correspondence, bills, polite greetings from colleagues. But as I delved deeper into the archive, I found a series of emails from someone named Svetlana. The messages, dating back several months, were undeniably personal. "Alex, I miss you terribly. When will we see each other again?" Svetlana had written in one particularly saccharine message. Alex's reply sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. "Soon, my dear. We just need to be patient a little longer. Everything will be sorted out and we'll finally be together." My cheeks flushed with a mixture of anger and a profound sense of hurt. Infidelity, it stung a deep, painful wound. But it wasn't as terrifying as the chilling realization that this affair might be inextricably linked to a far more monstrous plan. I meticulously copied the entire email correspondence, careful not to miss a single detail. Next was his phone, which proved to be a far greater challenge. Alex always kept it glued to his side and ensured it was securely locked. However, I recalled a fleeting moment weeks ago when I had pretended to be asleep and had glimpsed him entering his password. My mind raced desperately, trying to reconstruct the sequence of numbers. To my shock, the combination worked. Inside his phone, I found even more damning evidence to support my growing fears. Beyond the suggestive messages from Svetlana, there was a disturbing conversation with an unknown number discussing delicate matters and guarantees of complete anonymity. In one particularly chilling message, Alex had written, "The main thing is that it looks completely natural. No suspicions whatsoever." The ground seemed to slip away beneath my feet. It was too much, far too many horrifying coincidences. Recalling Serena's earlier advice, I decided to reach out for help in tracing the origin of the vintage watch. The next day, using her extensive network of contacts, Serena managed to track down Elena Petrova, the elderly widow of a jeweler who had run a small shop for decades before his recent passing. Elena Petrova lived in a modest little house on the outskirts of the city. Concealing my mounting anxiety, I told her about the vintage watch Alex had given me and asked if her late husband had ever created anything similar on commission. Elena Petrova was silent for a long moment, her frail fingers absently fingering a string of worn prayer beads. "My husband made many custom pieces over the years," she finally said in a quiet, almost hesitant voice. "But there was one particular order. It troubled him greatly. He became very secretive in the months leading up to his death. He said he was being threatened." I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest. "What was the order?" I asked, trying desperately to keep my voice steady and betray none of my growing agitation. "A watch," Elena Petrova replied softly. "Vintage watches that needed modification. The client insisted on a very specific clasp design, said it was absolutely crucial. My husband refused for a long time, but then he agreed. He desperately needed the money at the time." "Who was the client?" I pressed, my voice barely a whisper. Elena Petrova shook her head sadly. "He was very careful. My husband only ever said it was a very influential person." "How did your husband die?" I asked, trying to sound casual, as if it were just a passing curiosity. "A heart attack," Elena Petrova answered, her voice suddenly flat, devoid of emotion. "But he never once complained about his heart." She reread Mikey's report from the pawn shop. It clearly stated, "The vintage watch has been modified and contains a hidden mechanism with a slow-acting poison." Mikey had even attached magnified photos clearly showing the microscopic capillary embedded within the clasp. Anna knew this alone wasn't enough for a rock-solid court case. She needed an independent analysis. Lena, as always, came through for her. She quickly arranged a meeting with a toxicologist, a reputable expert willing to analyze the substance in the watch. The 2 days of waiting felt like an agonizing eternity. Anna barely slept, constantly imagining every possible terrifying scenario. She feared Mark would suspect something, that he'd flee, or worse, finish what he'd started. Finally, Lena called with the news. The analysis definitively confirmed the presence of a toxic substance in the watch. "It's thallium," Lena said, her voice grim and heavy. "A slow-acting poison that causes symptoms easily mistaken for common ailments. Prolonged exposure leads to severe nervous system damage and ultimately death." Anna felt a profound shiver run through her body. Thallium. Everything fell into place with horrifying clarity. The dizziness, weakness, nausea, it wasn't random, but the calculated result of cold-blooded poisoning. Mark had meticulously planned her death, intending to disguise it as a natural illness. She vividly recalled her conversation with the jeweler's widow, who had mentioned the strange order, the client's urgency, and the mysterious person who wouldn't reveal their name. Anna borrowed Lena's phone and called the widow. "Hello, this is Anna," she said, keeping her voice as steady as she could. "We spoke about the vintage watch order." "Yes, I remember," the widow replied, her voice tinged with unease, as if she knew what was coming. "I need your help. I need you to confirm to the police that Mark placed that order." "Good Lord," the widow whispered, a gasp escaping her lips. "I suspected as much. He came to me the day after we spoke, offering money to keep quiet." "Thank you," Anna said, her voice filled with a desperate gratitude. "Your testimony is crucial." With all the irrefutable evidence finally gathered, the detailed correspondence, the toxicology report, and the widow's crucial testimony, Anna decided it was time to act. She called the police and immediately requested a meeting with an investigator. The meeting took place the very next day. Anna sat in the office of Detective Miller, the lead investigator, and calmly recounted her entire harrowing story. Miller listened attentively, occasionally asking clarifying questions, his expression serious but professional. Anna felt a sense of profound trust in him. She laid out all her evidence on the table: magnified photos of the watch, the damning toxicology report, meticulously printed emails, and the widow's poignant statement. Miller studied each document carefully, his brow furrowed. "These are serious accusations, Anna," he stated when he finished. "We'll need very strong evidence to arrest your husband." "I have everything," Anna replied, looking him directly in the eyes, her voice clear and unwavering. "I know he tried to kill me, and I'm ready to prove it." Miller nodded slowly. "We'll investigate thoroughly. If everything checks out, we'll take immediate action." The next few hours dragged on like a slow-motion film for Anna. She waited for news, her phone clutched in her hand, every nerve on edge. She feared Mark would somehow discover her actions, that he'd escape, or worse, destroy evidence. Finally, around 6:00 p.m., her phone rang. It was Miller. "Anna, we've detained your husband," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "He's in custody. Please come to the station. We need your full statement." Anna felt a massive wave of profound relief wash over her, so potent it made her knees weak. It was over. She was safe. At the police station, Anna gave a detailed, comprehensive statement. She recounted everything she knew about the watch, her alarming symptoms, Mark's crippling debts, his affair, and the jeweler's specific order. She answered the investigators' questions calmly and confidently, her resolve unbroken. Meanwhile, Mark vehemently denied all charges. He claimed the watch was just a thoughtful anniversary gift, that he knew nothing about any poison, and that he loved Anna and would never ever harm her. He desperately insisted she was delusional, that she'd made it all up. But the evidence against him was undeniable. The toxicology report confirmed the deadly poison in the watch. The correspondence with his mistress and his staggering debts provided a clear, chilling motive, and the widow's testimony definitively confirmed Mark had ordered the custom-modified watch. A few days later, Mark was formally charged with attempted murder. He was arrested and placed in a detention facility. The police investigation continued, uncovering even more horrifying truths. They discovered that Mark had long been deeply involved in fraud and had disturbing ties to criminal networks. It turned out he was drowning in debt and cynically planned to collect a substantial insurance payout after Anna's death. They also shockingly discovered that the jeweler's death wasn't accidental. Mark was directly involved in his murder to cover up the poisoned watch order. Anna learned all of this from the news. Sitting in her apartment watching the TV screen, she felt a surge of pure visceral anger. and overwhelming disgust. She simply couldn't believe she lived alongside such a monster. After everything she'd been through, Anna took a long, arduous time to recover. She sought help from a compassionate psychologist to cope with the immense trauma. She eventually changed her apartment, found a new job, and slowly but surely rebuilt her social circle. She desperately wanted and needed a completely fresh start. A year later, Mark's trial took place. He was found guilty of all charges and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. Anna didn't attend the trial. She felt no desire to see Mark again or waste any more of her precious energy and emotions on him. She simply wanted to forget him forever, to erase him from her mind. After the trial concluded, Anna bought herself a new watch. Not a vintage piece, but a modern, stylish, and utterly reliable one. When she carefully put it on her wrist, she felt a profound sense of a new life awakening within her. This watch was more than just a timepiece. It was a powerful symbol that her time now belonged only to her. She was finally free. She had survived. And she would absolutely be happy. Listen to your body and your intuition. Anna's physical symptoms were the first major warning signs. Never dismiss sudden, unexplained changes in your health or a persistent gut feeling that something is wrong, especially in close relationships. Documentation is your strongest defense. Anna's meticulous gathering of emails, phone records, and professional reports was crucial in proving the truth. In any situation involving suspicions or potential harm, document everything. Seek outside expert opinions. When your concerns are dismissed by someone close to you, don't hesitate to consult independent professionals like the pawn shop appraiser, a lawyer, or a toxicologist in Anna's case. They can provide objective, factual information. Don't fear exposing the truth. It takes immense courage to confront a loved one, especially when the truth is horrifying. Anna's willingness to pursue justice, even when it meant exposing a dark reality, ultimately saved her life. Prioritize your safety and well-being. Once Anna realized the severity of the threat, her actions became singularly focused on her safety. This included going to the police and severing ties with her abuser. Your safety always comes first. Healing is a process. Surviving such a profound betrayal leaves deep scars. Anna's journey to therapy, changing her environment and rebuilding her life, highlights that healing is a personal, ongoing process that requires self-compassion and effort. This story is a chilling reminder of how easily trust can be shattered and how insidious betrayal can be, even from those closest to us. What do you think was Anna's bravest moment? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If Anna's journey resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more true stories of resilient survival and finding strength in the face of adversity.